Namaskar, Salam Alaikum, good morning to each and every one of you. It's my honor to be asked to moderate the session. My name is Sudhindra Kulkarni. How do I begin, friends? This morning I was listening attentively to Professor Shriram Chaulia, and he said that this is not merely an intellectual conversation, it's also a spiritual conversation. In a university, to have a spiritual conversation is somewhat unusual, but he explained the reason for it. When he met the great master, Fethullah Gulen, at his spiritual retreat in the United States, he asked him about how to end all the violence and conflicts taking place around the world. And the master spoke in his feeble voice, but he said that mankind should come back to the spiritual path, as if that is the path to end conflicts. History shows that it can never be. Come back to the spiritual path. What is the spiritual path? The path of connection to God and the path of connection to society. In this conference as a whole, and also in this particular session, we are focusing on the second aspect, connection to society. The spiritual connection to society is through service. That is Hizmet. The meaning of Hizmet, service. Service of man is service of God. In our own culture, in Indian culture, in Hindu culture, I'm a Hindu, we say, Nara Seva, he Narayan Seva hai. Nara Seva, that is, service of man is service of God. But it's not unique to any one spiritual tradition, neither to Hinduism. I also had the good fortune of meeting Hoja Effendi, Fethullah Gulen, at his what I call ashram. Ashram is a spiritual commune. What struck me is how he presented the true nature of Islam. I won't take much time, but I must present what struck me as the core of his philosophy. He says religion is a road that brings everyone together in brotherhood. Everyone, despite all the diversities, religion, true dharma, brings everyone together in brotherhood. Universal values are to be found in all religions. This is Hoja Effendi. Then he says, as a Muslim, I accept all prophets and books sent to different peoples throughout history and regard belief in them as an essential principle of being Muslim. When I met him, friends, it was 2018, 1 year before Mahatma Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary, and I follow the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi. I presented my book on him, on Mahatma Gandhi, to Hoja Effendi, and this is what Fethullah Gulen said. Gandhi was a pious Hindu but he had the highest regard for Islam and Prophet Muhammad. He sacrificed his life for Hindu-Muslim unity. Gandhi's non-violence strongly resonates with Islam's message of peace, mercy, and universal brotherhood. His life, especially his way of peaceful resolution of conflicts, has a deep influence on me. He also sent an elaborate message on the occasion of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So, I warmly congratulate O.P. Jindal Global University for organizing this international conference, because the teachings and the legacy of Fethullah Gulen needs to be universalized. It is one of the unique, absolutely unique service organizations present in more than 100 countries, including India. Unfortunately, not many Indians know about it. So it is through conversations like these that we can spread the universal message of Hoja Effendi Fethullah Gulen. And therefore, after once again congratulating the organizers, also Indialogue Foundation, the tireless efforts of my young friend Bezad. Where is he? Is he here? Ah. So I now begin the panel discussion. We have absolutely outstanding panelist friends. I only read the summary of their papers. May I open the session by inviting our first speaker, Professor Andrew Skotnichi, if I have pronounced your name right. And the title of his paper is Fethullah Gulen, The Night of Faith in the Eternal City. Night of Faith, Eternal City. Amazing combination.
Earthly city, that's okay.
Earthly city, also eternal. Yeah, thank you.
It isn't true. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have to say that I'm always humbled to be with the devoted followers of Fethullah Gulen. You embody to me how I would like to live. Your faith, your social vision, your commitment to education are awe-inspiring, and I think the most important movement for social transformation in our world today. I would like to talk about Fethullah Gulen briefly and look at him through the lens of two important thinkers. One, the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, and he developed this metaphor of the night of faith, K-N-I-G-H-T, which I think is embodied and exemplified in the life of Mr. Gulen. And I'd also like to look at St. Augustine, who, although they were separated by 1,600 years, he and Fethullah Gulen both understood that there is a city of God. There is a membership of people who have devoted themselves to loving God and their neighbor. Augustine said there's only two kinds of love. You either love yourself and deny God, or you deny yourself and you love God. And what I find in Gulen, as I found in St. Augustine, is that we are living in a city, he called it the earthly city, that does not profess love for God, that lives by materialism, violence, competition, consumerism. And yet they both understood that we live in this earthly city, and we owe an allegiance to our sisters and brothers there. And so Mr. Gulen exemplifies those two, particularly through his Sufi faith, Sufis, as you well know, follow traditional Islamic law and practice. But they also have a dimension where they feel a mystical connection to our God. And I think that is the most singularly important thing about Fethullah Gulen. I would also like to look at briefly, very briefly, the insights of a sociologist you may or may not know, Ernst Troeltsch, in his concept of the social problem, which I think is essential to understanding the role of Fethullah Gulen and Hizmet, as it, if you want to say, tries to influence an unbelieving world. And finally, I want to look at the concept of what's called eschatological hope. Now, that's a big 25-cent word, but eschaton is a Greek word simply meaning the end of things, and how we believe that there'll be a glorious ending, those of us who are believers, in which God will be revealed as all in all. So let me begin by the fact that Mr. Gulen was a mystic. It's a fancy term, but a mystic is simply someone who feels a direct engagement and blessing of God's presence that transforms his or her vision into one in which the self and the other are brought into one by the divine love. Listen to Mr. Gulen as he talks about his mysticism. The mystic disappears so completely into the awe of the divine presence that he or she no longer hears their own voice or breath. The resultant illumination leads the recipient to perceive the veil behind all of humanity. The philosopher Henry Bergson said there's only two kinds of religion, dynamic and static. And in this, Mr. Gulen exemplifies a dynamic religion. Dynamic religion is a religion that has been so transformed by the love of the other that there is no effective difference between Muslim, Jew, Christian, and for that matter, atheist. And that particular gift that the mystic has is exemplified in Mr. Gulen. Mr. Gulen states that his spiritual practice unifies the spiritual and material worlds, and says of the mystic that the mystic is set free from the narrow confines of three-dimensional space and finds himself in the immensities of the infinite. So Mr. Gulen was a mystic who was able to transcend all of the various barriers that exist between people. But let's talk for a moment now about Mr. Gulen's faith. It's important to distinguish the difference between faith and belief. Belief is the assent to spiritual truths. It is an act of knowledge. In other words, every Muslim knows the Shahada. There is only one God, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that prophet. Every Christian knows the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God the Father Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. Every Jew knows the Shema. Hear this, O Israel, the Lord God is Lord alone. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and all your strength. Those are intellectual, verbal commitments, but they are not faith. Because faith is not knowing. Faith is unknowing. To be a person of faith is to dwell in the darkness. It's to cross a liminal threshold in which everything you held on to as sure has become opaque. You're not sure of your own goodness. You're not even sure sometimes whether God is with you. But as Psalm 23 says, you continue to walk in the darkness and you fear no evil. The beauty of faith is exemplified in Mr. Gulen more than any human being I have read in recent years. And he says beautifully that the person of faith is a complete human being who allows faith to influence their every thought and action, whether one walks along a straight path or climbs the steepest slopes. He will continue his journey unfazed. And didn't Mr. Gulen have to climb steep slopes? Was he not hounded, persecuted, Was his life not threatened? Was he not declared an enemy of the state and vilified in public television for trying to overthrow the government? And yet, Mr. Gulen, despite all of this, held that rather than attacking his persecutors, and let's go back to the mysticism, right? All barriers have been eliminated in the divine love. Gulen says, rather than vilifying those who question him, he says, the believer always questions himself. He is so busy with his own failings, he has no time to criticize the fault of others. And this is what reminds me of Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard developed the Knight of Faith, saying that it is the most important concept for any believer. He calls it a great leap whereby I pass into infinity and infinite resignation. And listen to him when he says, oh, people think that faith is not a work of art, that it's some coarse and common work, only for clumsy natures. Oh, this is far from the truth, he says. The dialect of faith is the finest and most remarkable of all. I may be able to walk about existence on my head, but faith I cannot do, for I cannot perform the miraculous, but only be astonished by it. You've been astonished, my friends. That's why you're here, and that's why I'm here, because our dear Gulen was a knight of faith. He also knew how to live in the earthly city. St. Augustine, at the end of the 4th and early 5th centuries, was living in North Africa, but it was a populated region by Roman legions and Roman power. He had to learn how to navigate that tricky difference between holding true to one's faith and yet not allowing one's faith to be destroyed by imperial or violent means, in his case, the Roman Empire. And it's exactly what happened with Mr. Gulen. He had to learn how to navigate his faith in hostile polities, hostile secular polities. So 2 things Augustine said that Gulen agreed on both. 1, the earthly city is not going to last. It can't, because only the city of God will last. Only the city predicated upon love and justice and holiness will last. All our secular kingdoms, Rome in his time, America, Russia, China, all of them are going to go into ruin. They have to, because only the city of God endures. But, Augustine said, there's one thing that secular society does, and it gives us peace. And we want peace. He says even robber barons and groups of thieves want to live in peace. And so he said, because Jews, Christians, Muslims take advantage of that peace, then we owe a responsibility to our society to work for peace and to support the government in its attempts to create a peace for us. Secondly, he said that even though we may not share faith with some of our citizens, we owe them because they're still our brothers and sisters. And so Augustine said, you must live in the earthly city, benefiting from the peace that allows us to have gatherings like this, and also to care and work for the good of our brothers and sisters. So again, listen to Mr. Gulen. For as long as humanity has existed, we have dreamed of peace, obsessed over it, chased after it, struggled for its sake. Peace that we pursue can only be attained through the merit of perfect faith. And Mr. Gulen, just like Augustine, tried to work for the good of all human beings and was persecuted for it. He was persecuted when he met with Pope John Paul II. He was persecuted when he met with Jewish leaders, because he refused to see any difference between anyone, because all are blessed and carry the divine imprint. Let me speak briefly about the social problem. Ernst Troeltsch developed this, and I think it captures and embodies exactly how believers and people of faith ought to comport themselves in secular cultures or in hostile cultures. And simply put, Crouch argued that there is an indivisible boundary between infinite power and social cultural movements. In other words, the social problem is believers can try to influence how secular polities will behave. They may make small incursions. Think how powerful Hizmet was in Turkey in the last decades of the 20th century. But notice how quickly that power evaporated once state power got involved. Look at what's going on in Minneapolis in the United States, where police who are there to serve and protect are murdering people, shooting people in the back. It is what states do, my friends. They have a monopoly on the use of violence, and they will use it. Look what's going on in Iran. Look what's happened in Turkey. And that's why Crouch is so important. But don't think for a second that Mr. Gulen didn't know that. He understood that all of our victories are provisional, that we always have to struggle against forces that are aligned against the ultimate vindication of any division that exists between man and woman, between Jew and Greek, between slave and free, between Muslim and atheist and Christian. And so Mr. Gulen really exemplifies that social problem. And he says beautifully, Hizmet members really know this truth. The prophet knew why he was crying, just as those mature spirits, satisfied only with faith, divine knowledge, and love, and prepared for eternity, also know why they are weeping, and of what they are in pursuit. There are reasons for people to cry. And so Mr. Gulen wept. He wept for you, for me, and for our aching world. And finally, I want to talk about the virtue of eschatological hope. The hardest thing for us to do as believers is to live with our own failures, because we want what's called the tyranny of results. Not all of us. How many people have grown cynical? How many people have lost faith in activism? How many people have tired of raising voices against those who destroy and dehumanize and mock the sacredness of human life? Mr. Gulen understood. I'll use St. Paul's words. You're going to sow a harvest you'll never reap. And if you have a victory, you'll be reaping a harvest you never sowed. But eschatological hope says God ultimately is the author of history and will be there to bring all of history to a glorious conclusion. And that is what animated Mr. Gulen throughout his entire life. Speaking of people like himself, Gulen states, they continue their way unshaken, even if their calculations and their plans should fail 50,000 times, taking on an attitude of prosperity. Even in the face of poverty, they become life for dead souls and strength for those bent at the knees. He is our hero. He's our knight of faith. And he has provided for us a vision that has brought us here today. And please, God will sustain us to be knights of faith in the earthly city.
Friends, our next panelists, we are two of them presenting a common paper. The paper is The Religious Foundations of Hizmet's Core Values, a Quranic and Prophetic Framework, by Arhan Kardas and Ahmed Kurchan.
Well, I want to introduce my colleague, Dr. Ahmed Kurucan. He's one of my abis, and he's also a scholar of Islamic jurisprudence, just like me. Thank you. Pardon? Thank you. It's very good. Thank you. And we prepared this paper together, but I will be presenting it in English, and he will join me in some cases, and if something. But he would like to sit. Thank you. So he's actually. Okay, there we go. He's protecting me and always. Anyhow, well, let me say this paper is about the core values of Hizmet Movement, and we work together with Mr. Dr. Ahmet Kurucan in a community together to present this paper and this work. That's why the valuable contribution of Ahmet Kurucan is very important. Now I'm beginning with my presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished professors from all over the world, from hosting the successful Jindal University of India, worthy organizers and initiators of this special conference, valuable experts of the Hizmet Movement, and honorable guests. Today, we do not have enough time to present our topic within 15 minutes. This, according to us, a very promising document, the religious foundations of the core values of the Hizmet Movement, cannot be presented within 15 minutes. We have 20 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes more. We will try. Let alone the comparison between Islamic documents, thank you very much, on human rights. We will try to summarize the core objectives of the Hizmet document and some other declarations of the Islamic approach to the international human rights. Then we will search for the similarities and distinguishing features of the Hizmet Movement document. We will delay the deeper survey of the critics of the Hizmet document to another time, since we don't have enough space for it within this conference. As you already know, Hizmet Movement released a document on the 21st September 2025 concerning the religious foundations of the 12 core values of the Hizmet Movement. The 12 core values, I hope you know that, 12 core values are already launched on the 21st September 2021 with the contribution of several organizations representing the Hizmet Movement throughout different countries. The Association Alliance for Shared Values was the leading organizers in this document. The researchers of Hizmet and some other scholars found those values very promising, but they criticized the 12 principles being abstract without any background of any religion, especially Islam. This was the reason that 3 foundations came together, just like Islamic Academy for Education and Society from Germany, and Alliance for Shared Values, as well as the WISE Institute from the United States, to put in the justification of the declared principles from religious sources, it as the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet, and the ijtihad of the scholars, as well as the works of Gülen's predecessor, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, and Gülen himself. After 3 years of search, the document was released in Turkish with 21 pages, giving verses, hadiths, and opinions of the scholars till to Mr. Fethullah Gülen, and underlying the necessity of justification of 12 principles of the Hizmet movement. This important attempt could be understood that the Hizmet movement, a global education movement struggling for universal peace, focuses on the values rather than mortal personalities, such as its founder. This document, better said, work or book, is now in the process of translation in English and German as a whole. The primary goal of the book is to demonstrate that these universal values are deeply rooted in Islamic tradition and provide a theoretical basis for the movement's practical activities. The book emphasizes that every human being is inherently honorable and valuable, regardless of their religion, language, or race, based on the principles of inviolability of human rights, since they are based on humanity, not on religious identity. Technically said, al-ismatu bil-adamiyya la bil-iman wa la bil-aman. And all individuals are considered equal before the law. To this self-evident particular position, we want to give an important source from one of the most prominent scholars of Islamic jurisprudence, Ubaidullah ibn Omar ad-Dabusi, who died at 1039, so in 11th century. Abdullah ibn Omar ad-Dabusi is one of the most important theoreticals of Islamic jurisprudence, and he wrote in 11th century about human rights. He says, Azimma. Azimma means lexically covenant. When God, the Exalted, created human being to bear his trust, he honored him with reason, guarantee, and covenant, Azimma, making it capable of bearing rights and duties. He granted him, human being, him is, please don't understand this just one gender, but human being, the Adam, and all the human beings, the right to life, protection of inviolability of the life, and freedom, hurriya, and property, ownership, malikiya, so that he might bear his rights. Then he imposed upon him the rights of God, which he termed amana, as he willed, much like when we enter a covenant with non-Muslims and grant them guarantee, becoming responsible for upholding their rights. In this way, all rights established in this world for Muslims apply equally to non-Muslims. No human is created without this guarantee, az-zimma. Thus, no one is created without being worthy of legal rights being imposed upon him. Just as no one is created without being free and owner of his rights. These bestowals of favor, karamat, are granted to him, human being, based on his guarantee az-zimma, and therethrough he bears the rights of God, the Exalted. As a result, so this is one of the documents which has probably inspired also, as far as I think, John Locke in his Two Treatises of Government, talking about three fundamental rights: right of life, right of property, and right of freedom, being freedom. So I wrote an article about this situation, comparing John Locke and Abdullah ibn Omar al-Dabusi. There are 700 years difference between them, but they inspired each other, as far as I see, because he was inspired. Anyhow, as a result, the movement, Hizmet Movement, advocates for social justice, equality of opportunity, and the necessity of conducting all activities with the framework of national and universal legal principles, adhering to norms and transparency and accountability. Another important value of Hizmet movement is social peace and positive action. Hizmet is defined as a peaceful movement that categorically rejects the use of violence, as said before, as a political tool. Following the principle of positive action, müsbet hareket, it prioritizes constructive and peaceful methods over destructive ones. A Hizmet participant aims to be a person of trust, al-amin, ensuring that no harm comes to others from their actions and words. Another important value of Hizmet Movement is the empowerment of women and ethical framework. So I'm combining them together to make it short. The movement promotes the empowerment of women and their participation in all areas of social life without discrimination. It operates within an ethical framework defined by honesty, trustworthiness, and fairness. A fundamental tenet is that legitimate and righteous goals can only be achieved through legitimate and righteous means. Another important value of Hizmet Movement is pluralism and volunteerism. Individual and social diversity is embraced as a form of divine wealth. As we said before in the opening, the diversity. Participation in the movement is entirely voluntary. Individuals are free to join or leave based on their own choices. Volunteerism is seen as a sincere dedication to the development of humanity without expecting any worldly rank, material reward, or even appreciation in return. And a further value, common mind and civil independence decisions. Common mind within the movement is made through consultation, istishara, and the common mind rather than individual charisma. Hizmet maintains its character as a civil and independent movement, not serving as an extension of any state or political entity. It explicitly rejects the transformation of religion into a political ideology or its instrumentalization for political purposes. An active citizenship, environment, and the holistic approach to human being. An active citizen involves taking social responsibility to solve human problems. The environment is regarded as a sacred trust to be preserved for future generations. Finally, the movement advocates for the integrity of mind, science, and heart spirituality. It argues that true human perfection is achieved by balancing intellectual development with spiritual discipline, as you stated before. In conclusion, this book, The Religious Foundations of the Core Values of Hizmet Movement, serves as both a guide and a compass for future generations and an identity card for the global public to understand the vision, values, and religious foundations of the Hizmet Movement. On the other hand, the authors, just like Mr. Kurucan and I, foresee a possibility of this work serving as a role model for other communities of Islamic motivation. The compatibility of religious approaches with international human rights standards is not only an issue of Hizmet Movement. Similar attempts and approaches to universal human rights discussions have already emerged within the frameworks of Muslim countries, communities, and foundations. So I want to state some of them, not all of them, but some of them. One of them is, the most important of them, is actually the Cairo Declaration, but I named them from the beginning. In 1981, there was a paper released which is called Universal Islamic Declaration of Human Rights, a private initiative that relies heavily on Quranic and Hadith citations for every right. It maintains a clear distinction between Muslims and non-Muslims regarding public office and legal status. This is the first document. And the second document is the Cairo Declaration. This is important, 1990. Although non-binding, it holds authority among 57 Organization of Islamic Conference member states. It confirms some United Nations guarantees but negates others by subordinating them to Sharia. So this concept is also a very misleading and misunderstood concept, Sharia. part of the religion. But in those documents, we see it as a normative document, as a text, as the rule of law or something like that. And there is this Arab Charter, a bit different, of different nature, 2004. This is considered to be the most progressive document and is legally binding for the 10 states that ratified it. It refers to the universality of human rights and provides exemplary protections for children, the disabled, and women against domestic violence. The nature of these declarations are primarily defined by the attempt to reconcile human rights with Islamic law, which often leads to conflict with international human rights protections. In these documents, Sharia is frequently positioned as the supreme or sole source of law, effectively making international standards secondary. Another weakness of those documents are the concept of ummah. Unlike the universal approach of the United Nations, these documents often focus on the ummah, the Islamic community. This collective focus contradicts the principle that all people are equal, as rights are sometimes restricted to the faith community. Another weakness of the document is the duties of rights. The critics often highlight that classical Islamic law regulates human duties rather than inherent human rights. And also there are some Sharia reservations according to the understanding of the classical Islamic law. This is another weakness of these documents. There are some similarities with the Hizmet document. The similarities is actually they are all emphasizing on human dignity, karama. They are all highlighting the principle of consultation, and they all say that they are all emphasizing the importance of the Quran and the Sunnah. So those are the three similarities. And what are the fundamental differences of the Hizmet document? There are 7 fundamental differences of the Hizmet document, religious foundation of the core values, according to the other Islamic declarations concerning human rights. One of them is that the academic source, this document points out that the understanding of ummah, Hizmet document expresses full respect for all rights and freedoms in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights without such legal reservations. It emphasizes performing activities within the framework of both universal law and the laws of the countries where participants live. And the approach to gender equality, Islamic declarations are making gender equality before law a bit relative. But the Hizmet document emphasizes the empowerment of women. This is very important. The other difference is ummah-centric and universal human-centric approach. The documents concerning human rights within the context of Islamic law, they concentrate themselves on the notion of ummah. The Muslim ummah is important, and the others are not really in center. The Hizmet document, on the other hand, sees all the humanity as a family and aims to serve all humanity regardless of religion, language, or race. Pluralism and diversity are embraced as a divine richness. The fourth difference is the relationship between religious and politics. Islamic declarations, all documents are often drafted by intergovernmental bodies or organizations with political weight. Hizmet document, Hizmet defines itself as a civil and independent movement explicitly rejecting the turning of religion into a political ideology or its instrumentalization for political power. The fifth difference is, I also pointed it, the conservation of the Sharia. And the sixth one is the Islamic documents approach religion only from a legal point of view, whereas the Hizmet document for religion's foundations tries to see the human being as in a holistic way and tries to give core values for how to deal with intellect and heart, mind and spirituality in an independent and constructive way. The Hizmet document, as the seventh difference, defines universal peace as a proper goal of religion and as a means of achieving this goal, emphasizing on positive action rather than negative reaction and military interventions. Just 2 minutes, I'm making the conclusion. Thank you. The religious foundations of the core values of Hizmet Movement. This document, released on September the 21st, 2025, establishes a comprehensive theological justification for the movement's 12 core values by synthesizing primary Islamic sources, the Quran and Sunnah, with the intellectual contributions of prominent scholars such as Imam Al-Azam, Imam Abu Hanifa, Al-Ghazali, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, Fethullah Gülen, distinguishing itself from traditional Islamic human rights declarations such as the 1990 Cairo Declaration, which often subordinate universal freedoms to so-called Sharia-based reservations. The Hizmet document affirms the Universal Declaration of Human Rights without legal caveat. By prioritizing the principle that human inviolability is rooted in humanity rather than religious identity, the new movement shifts from an ummah-centric focus to a holistic, universal, human-centric paradigm that advocates for the full empowerment of women in professional and scholarly roles. Ultimately, the framework characterizes Hizmet as a civil, independent entity that rejects the instrumentalization of religion for political ends, instead emphasizing positive action and the synthesis of scientific intellect with spiritual discipline to foster global peace and social justice. Thank you.
I don't have any thought to add this presentation. So we already prepared this presentation.
I must say this was a very lucid presentation, and we keenly look forward to the English edition of the book. Your presentation has thrown up some very important ideas for discussion, especially the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the different contributions from an Islamic perspective. We all know that governments of Muslim nations often contest the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So I suppose this should be one of the points for discussion. The other that really struck me is your categorical assertion that religion should not be instrumentalized for political ends. We all know it's not limited to any one religion. It's happening even in India. So I'm sure that we'll have many issues to discuss. Bezad, how much time do we have for discussion? I was told, huh? I was told 30 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
Okay. Uh-huh. So please identify yourselves and shoot questions at the panelists. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the question. I'll preface it. I'm a Catholic. I know women may not be priests in the Catholic Church. And yet, anything progressive, right, is measured by what happens to the women. So I love what you said, human-centric, it's fantastic. How about the question of imama in Islam? So what is your answer to that? Thank you.
Well, I put a dissertation about such topics in 2022, which was published in Germany in a very prominent publishing houses within 400 pages. And I'm also dealing with the problem of imama. In Hizmet Movement, we had always had imamas which were governing the lighthouses from the beginning on. So the concept of imama was actually established within the framework of Hizmet Movement just early. And you are older than I, you know, what do we call them? Imama, imam and imama, which is responsible for one White House was called imam, and the women which was responsible for the lighthouses, regulating the issues of those houses and working for fostering the people, students, they were called imama. So the concept of imama was actually coherent in the Hizmet movement. But if you are asking me a particular question that women should lead the prayers, I mean the daily 5 prayers, well, I can give you the classical answers of the Islamic scholars in 7th century after Christ, 7th century. According to Abu Hanifa, they are not allowed to lead the prayer in front of the Jama'ah. They are allowed to lead the prayers for women themselves. As a women can be imama for women themselves. According to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, which is a later scholar of a bit Salafi understanding, but in this case, they are much more progressive because he says women can lead the prayer also for men, but not in front of the Jama'ah. They stay, the imama stay in the middle, men stay in forward, she stays in the middle, and women stays behind them, and she organizes the prayer with recitation of Quran. There is no, how can I say, no problem about it, according to Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And it is also stated in hadith books that a woman, which is called Waraka, was leading the daily prayers within his house, and the people who were, because she was reciting the Quran by heart, all the Quran. Waraka was a hafiza. She was able to recite the Quran. Those are the theological framework of praying. It's not, you understand, we don't have a kind of hierarchical, we don't have any hierarchy in Islam, just like in Catholicism, because in Catholic religion, there is a hierarchy of priests, and they are supposed to be ordinated from the church itself. In Islam, we don't have this hierarchy. Every person who is able to lead the prayer and knows better than the others are allowed to lead the prayer. So those are the theoretical backgrounds of your question. Thank you.
Just a moment, please. Since we have very limited time, you have a private conversation with him later.
It was just a historic answer.
Pardon?
You didn't tell me whether in the Hizmet movement you have women leading the prayer.
The women are leading the prayers.
Are they leading the prayers, before men? This is my question.
No, not before men.
Yeah, I know.
No.
Any other question, please? Yeah.
Thank you, panel. This panel, of course, was on thought, ethics, and philosophy. So naturally, you focus on the ideas and the ideational realm, and I really appreciate that. But my question is the translation from thought to action of all these ideals that have been talked about. Why are we lagging, in implementing or walking the talk? I mean, I don't mean within the Hizmet movement. I mean generally in the world, in Islamic society, non-Islamic society. What is the gap between these profound ideals that have been presented and the lived reality, which is still very, very profane and, lacking in the kind of exalted thought and sentiment that we have heard from all the panelists? Would anyone want to answer why we are not moving in the direction of implementing these great values and sentiments?
That's a wonderful question, sir. Well, first of all, Allah, God, is always raising up prophets. You don't see them, but there are prophets everywhere. And everywhere where there is a desecration of life, God is raising up voices. Now, maybe not mass movements that would satisfy whatever social vision you have. And this is by no means a criticism. But we go back to this concept of the eschatological hope. This is still God's world. And God is still going to bring it to a glorious conclusion. So the second answer to your question has to do with what I could call the tyranny of results. I know a lot of people who aren't marching anymore. I know a lot of people who the most they'll do is put a Black Lives Matter sign on their front lawn. Because people want to see some tangible amount of success. And that is the demonstrative value that people of faith have. I don't need to be successful. I need to be faithful. And there are faithful people everywhere. Now, will it be the kind of movement that's really going to transform society? That's exactly what I was trying to get at. The kingdoms of this world, I'll quote from my own tradition. There's a wonderful pericope in Luke chapter 4 when Jesus is being tempted and Satan is giving him various ways in which he can be successful. And he eliminates them all. But the chilling one is when he goes to the top of the mountain and he shows Jesus all the kingdoms of the world. And he says, I own all of them. Bow down to me and I will give them to you. And Jesus says, begone, Satan. So in other words, God will bring justice. God will wipe away every tear. God will, as Isaiah chapter 2 says, lead all the nations to the top of the great mountain, and all weapons of war will be turned into implements to feed the hungry. That is going to happen. So our task is to be faithful and raise our voices and not allow our own egos to determine whether or not we should be involved because we don't see things getting better. God is going to make a way, and God is going to bring darkness to its knees and bring Satan to his knees. So I hope that helps.
Henelito Sevilla Jr. from the University of the Philippines. I would like to thank the presentation of the esteemed speakers about your individual paper. I am also a follower of Hizmet. I'm not a member of Hizmet, but I follow Hizmet activities throughout the more than 15 years of my academic life. And I happened to meet also Fethullah Gulen way back in New York and in the last conference. My question here is that because the Hizmet movement has been challenged by, you talk about the state power, the state actors, and I'm not going to identify which country is that, but we all know that the people who are working in the Hizmet are being challenged by the state apparatus to just marginalize them, to silence them. And given that Fethullah Gulen just passed away physically, I would like to know what is your opinion about the future of Hizmet, given that you have encountered Fethullah Gulen as well as you work on different scholars about the Hizmet. The second point that I would like to raise here is about the conflict between the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Cairo Declaration, and the Hizmet Principle of Human Rights that you did mention. Our colleagues speak about the action, how these human rights principles are being operationalized in a modern life is really the question that I want to ask from you, given that there are conflicting, and this conflict may arise from cultural, from legal, and other things. Thank you.
You know much about the Hizmet that I moved into.
Because you were asked first.
No, I think he wants to know from both of us. Because I can't speak of the future of the Hizmet movement.
Okay. Ahmet abi söylemek istediğiniz bir şey var mı? Hizmet hareketiyle ilgili diyorlar. As your question, the answer of Dr. Kurucan is very inspiring. He says God knows the future of Hizmet movement. Nobody knows it. We can just imagine what is coming now. Well, according to my humble self, I don't know if you agree, but we also tried to give it in our paper. Our master, Muhammad Fethullah Gulen, has passed away. He was a human being, a mortal personality, a very important personality, a mortal personality. And our achievements in this distinguished university, Jindal University, might be seen a very small and tiny attempt to build up the peace throughout the world, might be seen. And I'm sure the people who crucified Jesus Christ didn't think that Christianity, the teachings of Jesus, will spread out throughout the world and get at least the half of the population of the humanity. At this moment, we always think very focused on a proper moment. We are living in the moment. We're not even living in the future or in history. So my humble opinion that the core values of Hizmet is drifting from a charismatic personality to a values-centered movement. So there are values. The values, we're talking about the values. Respecting human rights, respecting the other, respecting the diversities, trying to understand it, going as a zeal, the universal peace without human beings, to understand and to accept the other in his or her position. I think those values are very much important than the person who gave us to us, because the person is also important because he is the origin, but the values will be educated, and if we really focus on our attempts, and when God wills, only through the will of God, we will try to build up a peaceful future in India as well as throughout the world. So I believe it. I want to believe. I believe with all my heart that it is possible. We can change those challenges in a positive way. So this is my answer to the question. And the second question you were asking me, those challenges between Islamic understanding of human rights and those international declarations and the attempt of Hizmet movement. I think everything is beginning at the thought level, so in mind. So there are many Muslims, the Muslim societies are not well educated. If you go to Pakistan, 70% of the people are illiterate. They cannot even read or write. It means that they cannot even read the Quran. Not understanding it, so let alone understanding Quran, they can't even read it in Arabic. So if you think in North Africa, if you go to North Africa, half of the population are illiterate. So illiterate people can be manipulated. very easily. You can manipulate them. If you say them, you will go to heaven if you kill this, kill that, do this. They believe in it and they do it. You can misuse them. So again, I emphasize, if you want to, we must first of all correct the thought. There is no cohesion, there is no incompatibility with the understanding of Quran, the Hadith, and the scholarly understanding against peace, against human rights, against women empowerment. There is nothing about this. We must put it down clearly. If we began to put it down clearly in that level, so this is an intellectual level. Then from this level, it comes to heart, and from this, from heart, it will be also the deeds. The deeds are going to be according to the heart and the mind. And we can only achieve it through education, just like the Hizmet Movement do, and this Noble University does. Education, interreligious, intercultural dialogue, and helping needy people throughout the world. I think this is the solution according to our humble minds. Thank you.
Kamar Saab, very briefly.
Very brief, very small. Does Imam or clergy hold divine authority or sanctions?
Can you repeat the question?
Does Imam or clergy hold divine sanctions or authority ordained by Islam to them?
You're asking about Islam? In Islam? In Islam, in Sunni Islam, they don't have a divine authority. They don't have this. There is no divine authority of the clergy in Islam, and there is no actual clergy. If you look at Abu Hanifa, he is one of the most famous scholars. He was actually he was performing commerce. He was selling stuff, the clothes. This was his profession. He was not paid from the state of the Umayyads or any other governmental and political. So there were civil personalities. All the respected personalities in Islam, in Sunni Islam, they don't have any authority, a divine authority. But in Shia Islam, there is another sect of Islam. In Shia Islam, there is a clergy, and this clergy has some, how can I say, some special conditions and some special imtiyaz ne demekti Cenab Hocam? Privileges, yes, privileges other than an average person. But according to the Islam Sunni Islamic theology, there is no authority, divine authority of the clergy.
Friends, we've now come to the end of this session. I'll be very brief in saying that on behalf of all of you, we pray a wish that the Hizmet movement continues, grows from strength to strength, even though the master is no more in his physical form. Let's give a big round of applause to the panelists. Thank you.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our distinguished speakers and respected moderator, Mr. Sudhindra Kulkarni, for taking the time out and to share your valuable insights and experiences with us. Distinguished guests, your perspectives have truly enriched this discussion and made this session meaningful for all of us.
We especially thank all our panelists for taking out their time, wisdom, and thoughtful contribution. It was indeed an honor and privilege to host you. We also thank our delegates, participants, and the university community for their engagement and support throughout.
As we conclude this session, please note, after the break, we'll have two parallel sessions. Parallel session 1 is titled Interfaith Dialogue, Religious Encounters and Comparative Traditions. Those who want to attend this session may remain seated here, and the other panel will proceed to the different venue The other panel is titled Peace Building, Conflict Resolutions and Dialogue Theory. Those who wants to go to this panel, our team will assist you and will help you to reach the venue. So that is it for this panel. We request you to please take a 10 minutes break and enjoy our refreshments and hospitality. Thank you and good evening.